Ferrari just revealed the real reason behind Lewis Hamilton's failure in Brazil, and it changes everything about his role at the team. Why was Hamilton left on outdated parts while his teammate got all the upgrades? And why did no one at Ferrari speak up? We're about to expose the internal Ferrari document, the setup decisions, and the moment that proved Hamilton isn't being treated as an equal. Because if what Ferrari just confirmed is true, then Hamilton's final chapter in Formula One may already be written and not by him. Lewis Hamilton was never supposed to be a supporting act. He came to Ferrari to lead a revolution, to bring the most historic team in Formula One back to the top. But after what happened in Brazil and what Ferrari has just confirmed internally, everything has changed. The team has now admitted, off the record, that Hamilton is no longer part of the core technical plan for the rest of the season. No floor upgrade. No rear suspension changes. No setup flexibility. Nothing. The revelation came quietly. Not in a press release, not in an interview, but in an internal engineering directive sent out days after São Paulo. It instructed the team to concentrate all final development on Charles Leclerc's chassis. The reason given was data control and future car correlation. But in the language of F1 politics, that means something very specific. Leclerc is the priority. Hamilton will now drive with outdated components for the rest of the year. This is not speculation. It is now policy. And it explains everything we saw in Brazil. While Leclerc was fighting for the front row, Hamilton couldn't even make it out of Q1. He complained about rear grip, tire prep, and corner instability. But nothing changed. The setup remained untouched. The floor spec was the same used in Mexico. And when the race came, Hamilton's car suffered a loss of over 30 points of aerodynamic load after floor damage on lap 1, a situation that made the car almost undrivable. Still, Hamilton pushed on. He adjusted brake balance, corner lines, and throttle mapping. He did everything a 7-time world champion would do to stay alive in the race. But by lap 37, the team called it. Box. Retire. Save the engine. And yet, after the race, silence. No explanation. No defense. No confirmation that he had been driving with a spec nearly 3 races old. Just the quiet collapse of a weekend that was never built to give him a chance. And now, that silence has been broken, but not in the way fans hoped. Ferrari's internal document confirms that Hamilton's development path has effectively ended for the season. Leclerc will get the test parts. The floor evolution. The rear end upgrades. The strategy shaping. Hamilton? He will drive out the year. Gathering data. Holding position. The most successful driver in the sport's history, now assigned to a backup role. This wasn't an accident. It was a decision. And it leaves us asking the only question that matters now: was this always the plan? Or did Ferrari, in one of the most pivotal moments of its modern era, quietly decide to sideline a legend without ever saying it out loud? The numbers don't lie. And when you look closely at what happened in Brazil, they tell a very clear story. Lewis Hamilton was never in a position to fight. From the very first session, his SF-25 was down on grip, slow to rotate, and unable to generate the tire energy needed to attack. Not because of driving errors. Because of preparation, setup, and the absence of updates that Leclerc had already been given. Start with qualifying. Sector by sector, Hamilton lost time in exactly the same places he's been complaining about since Mexico corner exits. Turns 8 through 11 in São Paulo demand trust in the rear axle. Leclerc could apply throttle earlier, carry more speed, and stay planted through the twist. Hamilton? He was adjusting the wheel mid-corner just to keep the car stable. That is not a confidence issue. That's a mechanical grip problem, and it was there all weekend. The tire data confirmed it. Hamilton's rear tires were running 3 to 5 degrees colder than Leclerc's at the start of his push lap. That meant he was skating instead of sticking. It meant unpredictable grip, poor traction zones, and a car that refused to rotate on entry. In modern Formula One, that's the difference between pole and midfield. And in this case, it was the difference between fighting and fading. And yet, even with all those issues, Hamilton pushed through the sprint and went into Sunday's race prepared to fight. But it never came. After light contact at the start, sensors showed a loss of aero load on the left side of his floor. Over 30 points gone. And while that may sound abstract, here's the reality: that's enough drag to ruin every corner and destroy your top speed. Still, he drove on. Still, he delivered every lap with precision. But Ferrari knew the numbers. They saw the temperatures rising. They saw the data flatline. And by lap 37, they called it box the car. Save the engine. Live to fight another day. But here's the truth: there was no fight. Because Hamilton never had the tools. He never had the updates. He never had the support. Leclerc's car was evolving. Hamilton's was holding still. And when a driver of Hamilton's level is running outdated parts, running colder tires, and still getting no explanation from his own team, the numbers stop being data. They start being proof. Proof that Brazil wasn't a failure of performance. It was a consequence of Ferrari's internal decision to push Hamilton off the front line and into the shadows. This is not a story of bad luck. It's not about a damaged floor or poor tire temps. What happened to Lewis Hamilton in Brazil was the result of a much bigger shift, a quiet but deliberate change inside Ferrari's engineering department. The moment they stopped treating both cars equally. The moment they stopped building the season around two drivers and started building the future around one. After the United States Grand Prix, Ferrari held a closed-door technical meeting in Maranello. The decision made in that room changed the course of Hamilton's season. Development for the final stretch of 2025 would no longer be split evenly. Charles Leclerc would receive the new floor. He would get the revised rear suspension. He would get the updated beam wing. Hamilton? His SF25 would remain in static configuration no matter the feedback, no matter the deficit. The reason? Ferrari engineers were told the team needed to streamline correlation data between the current car and the early prototype for 2026. That meant running one car as a test platform and the other as a control. And Hamilton, despite his experience, precision, and technical feedback, was chosen to drive the control version. The version without upgrades. The version designed to remain stable, not competitive. That's how you treat a development mule, not a 7-time world champion. From Qatar to Mexico to Brazil, Leclerc's car evolved: visibly sharper turn-in, better traction, more aggressive aero balance. Meanwhile, Hamilton's feedback was logged, documented, and shelved. Ferrari's focus was no longer on extracting every tenth of performance from both cars. It was about building a long-term technical picture, and Lewis Hamilton had been repositioned within it. Even within the team, people started noticing. Engineers on Hamilton's side asked why certain updates weren't being mirrored across the garage. Some mechanics privately expressed concern that the setup direction wasn't shifting despite poor results. But the orders were clear. Hamilton's car had to remain as is so that Leclerc's evolution could be measured in isolation. In other words, the team had chosen who to build around. And Hamilton was no longer in that blueprint. What began as a technical strategy became a political message. Ferrari had made their decision. Not with a press release, not with a headline, but with silence, and with the quiet removal of Hamilton from the core of the project. He was still racing. Still showing up. Still extracting everything from a car that hadn't been touched in weeks. But the direction of the team had shifted. And it wasn't just about the 2025 season anymore. It was about 2026 and beyond. The most devastating moment after Brazil didn't happen on the track. It happened 3 days later, in Milan. Ferrari chairman John Leclerc took the stage at a corporate strategy summit. Asked about the team's trajectory, he said, "We are aligning our development around drivers who bring long-term synergy with the car." He didn't name names. He didn't need to. In Formula One, coded language like that is never accidental. To the press, it sounded like corporate jargon. But to those inside the paddock, it was a message. Synergy? Long-term? Those are words that apply to Leclerc, not Hamilton. It was the first public sign that the most powerful man at Ferrari was now speaking in future tense, a future that no longer revolved around the 7-time world champion in Garage 2. And Hamilton? No public response. No headline-grabbing quotes. No cryptic social media posts. Just silence. Controlled. Professional. But unmistakably heavy. People close to him say he's seen this before back at McLaren, in his final year at Mercedes, in 2021. The feeling of being boxed out, repositioned, reshaped into a role you never agreed to play. And every time, the result was the same: he came back sharper, stronger, and far more dangerous. Because Lewis Hamilton doesn't explode, he evolves. And that's what makes him so formidable. He doesn't beg for support. He doesn't demand attention. He absorbs the silence and turns it into fuel. Into laps that defy logic. Into statements that don't need microphones. And right now, Ferrari may believe they've made a clean, quiet transition. But they may have also just created the version of Hamilton they fear the most, the one with something to prove.